Hey there, my name is Alex. I am the Silvermont. And with the release of Shadow of the Erd Tree, we learned quite a bit in regards to Queen Marika and her people. So that is the topic of today's video. Of course, we will be covering spoilers for both base game Elden Ring and Shadow of the Erd Tree expansion. And to start things off, I'll give you a recap of my own Marika theory I had pre-expansion, just for added context. My belief was that Marika was a member of the Numen, a race, tribe, or peoples who were long-lived but seldom born, who came from outside of the lands between. The long-lived, seldom-born remark, combined with Melina's quote, "Life endures, births continue, there is beauty in that, is there not?" gave me the impression that Marika made a pact with the greater will, that her people, the Numen, were dying out, and the greater will, or Elden Beast, offered her the means to counteract that, promising her a bounty of flourishing life. Problems subsequently arose from how fleeting said life was, and how cursed her bloodline became. It's also worth pointing out that Miquella's role in the base game from cut content seems to suggest that his great rune was abundance, in contrast to Malenia's rot. In other words, they represented the duality of life, of nature, abundance, and rot. For example, green is the colour of flourishing life, but also of mould and decay. Of course, this is now no longer the case, as we know that Miquella's Great Rune instead, in the DLC, turned out to be effectively powerful mind control, to put it simply, a charming effect. At any rate, that was my pre-expansion theory, but now we have quite an interesting new set of information which suggests Marika became a god for quite a different reason, if still, in a sense, for her people. First up, it's very interesting to me that not once in the expansion is the term Numen used. Instead, we have perhaps an older, original name of Marika's people? The Shaman, or Shaman in American English, before one of you gets on me about that, like when I said dynasty and dynasty. Now, this is where the first point of curiosity arose. I was comparing the Japanese text with the English text, and I noticed that whenever I ran it through translations, I didn't get shaman, I got something more like priestess. Now, I don't speak Japanese, but the word is consistently printed in the Japanese version of the game as such. As it happens, the first time I ran the translation, I accidentally had it set to Chinese the first time I ran it, and I got those characters translated as witch, which is quite appropriate too. But in Japanese, this word seems to translate literally as Miko, as in shrine maiden. Priestess being a localization, you could say, because we don't specifically have shrine maidens or Miko in English. This is interesting though, because the term shaman, whilst not exclusively a male or masculine term, I would argue is more commonly associated with the masculine. Of course, you have the context to now, but when you think of shaman, what is the first image that comes to mind? Most of the people I asked thought of an older man. Miko though, shrine maidens, that is specifically a traditional female role. You don't really get male shrine maidens, so I'm not sure the reasoning behind localizing it as shaman. I don't inherently think it's a bad localization, but I do think that there are better choices. I do think that shrine maiden or priestess or even witch would have been a superior choice. The implication seems obvious in Japanese that this is a village of women. This becomes even more interesting if we look at the Japanese texts in regards to Numen. Marabito, rare people or visitors from afar, visitors from another world. Now supposedly, in Japanese Shintoism, Marabito refers to beings from other realms, and of course, Miko are the shrine maidens in Shinto shrines. At any rate, purely for the sake of this video, I will refer to Marika's people as Numen, because otherwise we will run into some confusing uses of the word shaman. So let's have a look, shall we? Keep in mind, these on-screen texts I have replaced, where accurate, shaman with Numen. One interesting thing to take away here, right from the start, would be the Great Jar, which mentions shamans, but in Japanese it does not use the same word as we have been seeing for the Numen. In fact, it uses the word Kitoshi, which translates to priest or cleric in a more generalized sense, whereas Miko is very specific from what I gather. At any rate, from all of these texts we can see that the Numen, Marika's people, were abducted from their home, cloistered in jails, brutalized with torture, including whipping, and then forced into pots, so that they might be reborn. The Hornsent appeared to be behind this, judging the Numen as sinners and condemning them to this fate, locking them away in jail where they need to eat maggots to survive, so is the implication of the frozen maggot item at least, before being turned into jars, and from the innards of these jars we can see flecks and hints of gold. Is this what Marika was seen drawing forth in the Shadow of the Erdtree story trailer? She is clearly at the Divine Gateway at the top of the tower, a gateway we are told in-game was once the birthplace of a god we know all too well. So, this was Marika's ascension to godhood. Weirdly enough, it seems that Marika used a different ritual than did Miquella. A lord will usher in a god's return, and the lord's soul will require a vessel. It is possible there are multiple methods, and this particular divination was specifically for Miquella. It's also possible Godfrey or another Elden Lord was present, but it seems almost as if Marika made a blood sacrifice of sorts, as I'm sure you noticed that in the trailer, that whole Divine Gateway area is very red and bloody, whereas the version we find in-game is not. Is that a deliberate change, or was that a change for ratings? I don't know. It appears at one point it was probably supposed to be red and bloody. The fact that it became white, that could be something to do with censorship, as quite often in Japanese games blood is censored to being white. But at the same time, Elden Ring's not exactly a game that censors easily, is it? It could have also just been a stylistic choice because maybe they thought white looked better for the final boss encounter. Blood sacrifice or not, the Hornsent clearly consider this some sort of betrayal, and upon ascending to godhood, at some indeterminate time in the future, we assume, Marika charged her son, Messmer, with purging the Hornsent. It's also possible the crusade happened prior to her becoming a god, and she used the purging and immense sacrifice to activate the Divine Gateway, although I think it probably happened after. We also learned from the expansion that the fingers who guided and spoke to Marika were perhaps misguided. There never was any hope. They were each of them defective, unhinged from the start. Marika herself and the fingers that guided her. This is what troubles me, that Marika and the fingers that guided her were unsound from the start. The truth lies deeper still. It is their mother who is damaged and unhinged. The fingers are but unripe children, victims in their own right. So to summarise this, Marika came from a village wherein they worshipped a great mother, or at least gave offerings to a great or grand mother. Perhaps it was this worship that caused the Hornsent to abduct the Numen, torturing them and turning them into saints by dismembering them, placing them into jars where they melded together. At some point, Marika charged her son Messmer to purge the Hornsent. Likely, this was after her ascension to godhood though, judging from the fact that she bestowed powerful blessings on those who partook in the crusade. Marika herself attained godhood through unexplained means at the Divine Gateway, potentially drawing on the power of golden hair, as the implication seems to have been that the Numen had golden hair. As for their name, Numen, visitors from another world, is that other world the Shadow Realm? We learned very little about the Shadow Realm and why it is veiled, but my current thinking, and this is very liable to change in the future, is that it was originally part of the same landmass as the lands between, but then at some point Marika veiled it and hid it in shadow. She obfuscated her beginnings, her origins, and the bloody purge of the Hornsent. Now, if we want to go a bit off the deep end here when it comes to theories, it is possible that Marika did have a lord during her ascension to godhood, and it was Radagon, Marika taking advantage of her Numen heritage. Numen flesh melds with others to take on a dual form, meaning she was her own Elden Lord. If that were true, however, that would mean that Radagon was a part of her from the very beginning. Furthermore, as for why the Hornsent were melding multiple Numen into one to become a saint, could this have anything to do with the Frenzied Flame? Probably not, but it's definitely put me in mind of that. All that there is came from the one great, then came fractures and births and souls. But the greater will made a mistake. Torment, despair, affliction, every sin, every curse, every one born of the mistake. And so, what was borrowed must be returned. Melt it all away with the yellow chaos flame until all is one again. Was this a Hornsent ritual to appease the One Great? Was it a mockery of the Numen's worship and beliefs? Indeed, was the Three Finger itself a twisted vestige of this act, warping past deeds in its misunderstanding, seeking to burn things away to a state of uniform clarity? Probably not. The Frenzied Flame does have a presence in the expansion, but connections are tenuous. It's just something that came to mind to me. We have the Three Fingers who wants us to melt everything together, supposedly an envoy of the Frenzied Flame, whatever. But then we learn in the expansion that the fingers are all misshapen, they are all warped and unhinged. Does that include the Three Fingers? Or does that exclude the Three Fingers? Maybe the Three Fingers is the only one that actually came out right. I don't know. But the Hornsent were basically melting people together, turning many into one, albeit without flame. It's funny that every jail is a frozen hell, though, isn't it? The flame of frenzy burns the eyes, but tranquility follows in its wake. The Lord of Frenzied Flame shall take their torment, despair, their affliction, every sin, every curse, all melted away. All in all, we know a little more about Marika now, but we have so many new questions, don't we? What do you think? Let me know down below, and until next time, thank you so much for watching, and take care.